Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry for the slight delay there. Just some last minute technical mishaps. Um, Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. I think we have a pretty good show for you today. We're going to talk the topic for today's show is "Your silence will not protect you." That's a quote from Audre Lorde. My silence had not protected me. Your silence will not protect you. It's from the era of the 80s and 90s when being part of the LGBTQ community and being in the closet was more common. And Ms. Lord was really commenting on the fact that it wasn't helping anything. It wasn't helping people as a community to not be able to come together and act as a community. And that happens in a lot of communities. You know, there's a lot of folks who support various things. Support progress in society, support gun control, support for just real legislation and separation of church and state and things that a lot of us believe in, but we've always been taught that it's the normal thing, right? So we don't bother to talk about it. And I think perhaps our silence has opened a door for these more radical elements to take up space, and we need to start talking about what the majority of us really like anyway. We'll be talking about that and the DHS Terror alert that is sort of associated with that. We'll be talking about return to in-person events, work balance, and the PPD Commissioner's most recent quote, which is really apt. It sounds like PPD Commissioner Outlaw is actually for defunding the police, if you listen to her quote. We have a bunch of special guests for you this week. It's SoLow Fest week, starting this weekend and continuing into next weekend. We have Hallie, Daniel, Mike, Anthony, we have Hallie, Daniel, James, and Catherine. And I'm going to bring them on screen so that they can introduce themselves. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show. Let's go in that order. I'm sorry, you said it was Hallie. Hallie, if you could please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Yeah, hi, my name is Hallie. I use she, they pronouns, and I am a member of the SoLow Fest staff for 2022.
And Daniel.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Daniel Burgess, he, him pronouns, and I am putting on one of the shows that are a part of SoLow Fest.
Excellent. And James.
Hello, I'm James Haro. I'm a singer-songwriter here in Philadelphia, and myself, as well as the person who will be introduced next, are going to be a part of a solo fest acoustic show at Quig's on Monday. It's a one-off event. My pronouns are he, him.
Great. And Catherine.
Hi, I'm Kat Rivers, she, her, and I am part of the event with James. Yeah, and also a singer-songwriter.
Awesome. And we're missing a couple of guests that were on the guest list, but they're excuse me, they're both from the two of the shows that were introduced. Well, the two shows that were introduced. And so let's talk about SoLow Fest. Hallie, what's it like being on the staff of SoLow Fest, and what's coming up that you're most excited about? What do you get to do as part of SoLow Fest?
So this is my first year working on SoLow Fest. Chris Davis has been our fearless leader for the past several years, but was kind enough to bring some current UArts students and recent UArts grads like myself onto the team to sort of start taking over some of the load from him. So it's been a really exciting experience. I've never really been in a role like this. I'm usually more of a writer or a performer myself. So it's been really fun to get to share this opportunity with the community and learn about these artists who are contributing their work to SoLow Fest. And I guess I'll explain a little bit of what SoLow Fest is as well for those of you who might not know. SoLow Fest is an annual DIY festival of new and experimental work. So we're focusing mostly on work that is quote low to the ground. So it's affordable, accessible, just new work that opens up to the community in a unique and experimental way. So yeah, it's been really exciting. I can't wait for all of it. I'm particularly excited for our launch party, and then just to kind of pop around and see all of the work that everybody has been working very hard on for the past, I don't know how long, maybe months, maybe years. Work kind of looks different in its developmental form. So I'm excited to see what everyone's got going on.
Awesome, awesome. Tell us a little bit about the two shows that you brought with you today. So we have, I'm sorry, I lost my my place here. We have Testing Site, which has Daniel. Tell us a little bit about Testing Site, and then I'll get Daniel to talk about it.
Yeah, so Testing Site was created by Daniel, who we'll hear from in a little bit, and then performed by Mike Anthony. It's going to be happening July 27th at our closing event. So it's going to be Daniel's show as well as a performance by To Be Frank, and then a closing event party that happens there as well. Daniel can speak a little bit more as far as the content of the show. I don't want to speak for him, but Daniel and I both just graduated from UArts, and so I'm really excited to see what Daniel's got going on post-grad.
All right, Daniel, what tell us a little bit about Testing Site, and I didn't know you were a recent grad, but congratulations.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Hallie, for the brief introduction. Hallie's an awesome performer, awesome artist. I'm so glad. I was awesome. It was just awesome to hear that you're a part of the staff when like everything was released. I was like, wait, what the heck? Yeah, Testing Site. I feel like I took a very traditional approach to this whole festival because as I was looking through all the other shows, I hear people were doing shows in diners and then just doing acoustic sets like you all. And I was like, dang, I don't know. I felt slight. I don't know. I took a more traditional approach and just put on like a show and wrote a script and did the whole thing because it's been great. It's been stressful on my part. I stressed myself out a lot, but then when I met Chris more formally and the rest of the staff, I'd say like a week ago, about a week ago. Did you make those brownies or cookies? I don't know. They were good. I enjoyed them. Talking to them, I got a little bit less stressed out. Yeah, I just need to remember the whole point of the festival was SoLow Fest, trying to make it so low to the ground, affordable, nothing too crazy. So trying to balance that, but it's been great. I've been working with my main actor, Mike Anthony, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but he is awesome. He's been so willing just to collaborate with me and all my messiness. And yeah, it was just, it's been good. It's been good. I'm nervous, but I'm just trusting the process every time I do one of these things. So.
Awesome. Thank you for introducing that. And I'm going to toss it back to you, Hallie. Excuse me. If you could give a brief introduction to our other two guests and, excuse me, their show, Going Acoustic at Quig's.
Yeah, so we've got James and Catherine here from Going Acoustic at Quig's, which is going to be happening June 20th at Quig's Pub. And I was very intrigued by the little tagline that you guys provided us to include in our promotional material, which is songs from sonnets, storage, and self-discovery. And then with that, I'll let you guys take over. It's a very exciting tagline.
Well, that was all Kat. Kat made our flyer. But it actually, I think it's the fact that us three musicians who have had similar tracks to this point. I think in having conversation with Kat and Emily about where we are with our music, we all have ties to the theater community, being actors, writers, producers. I myself have had 3 other shows in SoLow Fest through 2016, I believe, is the first one I put out. And they've all kind of devolved in like formality. Like Daniel, the first show I put up was like, it was a one person, like fully written script, awesome thing. And that actually was upstairs in Plays and Players, which is where Quig's is. So it's kind of a nice coming home. Um, this show that we're putting up on Monday. But yeah, throughout the years, it's kind of been like play, reading, and now just a one night event with music and friends. And I think the flexibility of SoLow Fest to be able to host it and be the umbrella for all of these different kind of events and artists wherever they are in their career, in quotes, journey, path, what have you. So yeah, so songs from Sonnets, Emily Schuman, who has been in the music scene as well in Philadelphia, her band Chickabiddy. This is her sort of branching out and finding her own individual voice. And so she's taking inspiration from sonnets from Shakespeare. I have my music project called James Haro in Storage. So that's the storage part of that little tag. And that comes from me sort of finding again my love for songwriting and making music during the pandemic while I was in my storage room in quarantine. So that's sort of the journey I've taken, is coming from underground and being able to perform live is sort of where I'm finding a lot of excitement. And Kat as well, and she can speak to this more, is finding her own journey to performing her own songs live. And Kat, if you want to speak a little more to that, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, self-discovery, I think the theme of SoLow Fest this year is kind of reinvention, correct? Yeah, and so I felt like that kind of went hand in hand with that a little bit. And so I'm kind of discovering this new music persona of Kat Rivers and who I am as a songwriter. Because before, as I mentioned, as James mentioned, that I did a lot of musical theater and I've sung in cover bands, and I work full-time as a musician singing covers now in an acoustic duo. So this is actually my first time. Oh, thanks. This is my first time playing my original songs out in a dedicated show to sharing those. So SoLow Fest, when James told me about it, seemed like the perfect opportunity because it's low key, not too much pressure on it. And so I couldn't be more thrilled to have an opportunity like this to showcase it.
Awesome. So there's a thing going around, which oddly happens to be timed just before SoLow Fest. There's the petition for the budget to include $6.2 million towards live arts and towards arts in general. Talking about 1% for the arts. I've always been fighting for 2% for the arts, but even 1% for the arts would be great. That petition is being headed up by the Philadelphia
Cultural Alliance.
Yeah, Greater Philadelphia
Yeah.
Cultural. Yeah, I couldn't remember the first word. Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, and so check that out. That petition is online, and see if you'd be interested in signing up to it. But the reason I bring it up is because we're always the city of Philadelphia always surprises me, and you guys can feel free to chime in anytime about any of this, like anything that you have any opinions on. Feel free to chime in. But it always surprises me that the city of Philadelphia seems to kind of lurch from like emergency to emergency, and we have like these big pushes for things. We had the big push for defunding the police. We had the big push for funding the arts, kind of at the same time, which was Facebook Memories has been kind enough to let me know 2 years ago now. So right about this time 2 years ago, we were all marching in the streets, and I was starting to live stream this kind of stuff. And none of that has actually happened. Now we seem to be on a rather urgent note about gun control, and anti-violence campaign, and there's always the undercurrent of Mission Zero or Vision Zero, and making sure that our streets are walkable and bikeable, lowering the incidence of car versus pedestrian death, which is not, perhaps surprisingly to anyone who lives in Philadelphia or works in Philadelphia, the second highest cause of violent death in the city of Philadelphia, aside from guns, is pedestrian death, car versus pedestrian or bicyclist. It's fascinating that we seem to lurch from thing to thing, and I kind of wonder why this is like the biggest poor city in the country, and I always wonder why we have this problem of not being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Was the way somebody put it. Somebody put it on Twitter. I would think that the city could walk and chew gum at the same time. We could worry about bicycle safety, and we could worry about funding the arts, and we could worry about police violence, and we could worry about gun violence all at the same time. I mean, we have a lot of people working on this stuff, right? So from an artist perspective, what would you guys see as like maybe a way to combine all of these efforts, or make things work out such that we're paying attention to all of these things?
I mean, I think art in and of itself is a form of activism. I think art and activism have historically always been connected. Artistry has always been a way to bring the spotlight towards things that have been suppressed by our system, or issues that haven't been shed light on before. And so I think that the arts have an incredibly important role in the push towards all of these agendas, and the push towards gun control, and the push towards anti-racism, ideally defunding the police, or just establishing some sort of alternative system. But I think that particularly like with SoLow Fest, and particularly with the work that we're trying to produce that is low to the ground and accessible, we open the space for people to come into these shows who might not have been exposed to theater before, and with that introduce them to some of these ideas and these concepts of activism. So I think that there's real potential in continuing to create art that is low to the ground and accessible, not just within SoLow Fest, but I think that when art becomes more accessible, activism becomes more accessible. And so hopefully more opportunities like this continue to arise, and some of the larger theater companies in the city begin to make their spaces more accessible as well.
Yeah, I would like to sort of tag on to that, and say that, and I don't know if it's been said enough, but a big component of Solo Fest is that no one gets turned away from a show. All shows are pay what you decide. If you are in a place where you just can't give away, any funds, you're not going to be turned away from the show. I think that is an important thing to move along with. I mean, I think something that has always been a struggle for me working in the arts, mainly in theater, is this idea that art should be valued, but it should also be accessible. And that conversation of what does that mean for an audience member and for theaters who, art makers, what have you, whether it's a nonprofit organization or not, like, where does the money come from to make that work? God, I wish that our country valued art, the way others do. And we didn't have a measly NEA, budget. And so a lot of the pressure from the artists, from the artists, from the nonprofit organizations, what have you, is to find funders. Those funders end up being folks who have resources. People who have resources mostly want to see themselves on stage and aren't interested in, the voices of marginalized communities. Or they might say they do, but then they'll come out of the theater and say, that wasn't for me, and I might not come back because they keep producing shows by, folks who are finding themselves being produced more, Black writers, but the audiences of those theater communities might not approve, or they might not say they don't approve, but secretly they're like, maybe not ready for this. So back to Hallie's point about art being necessary to showcase, like, what are the conversations that are happening right now? What needs to happen right now? And I will also say there is something important just in the act of someone standing up in front of people and speaking or sharing their perspective. I think that's necessary because if anything, even if whatever it is, someone gets to see someone else speak up. And I think that also in and of itself is important. I've found that I see people go up on stage and play music, and I think, well, maybe I could do that. And maybe my voice is important. And maybe things that I feel and want to express can be expressed to other people. So it all kind of feeds back, right? Like, you see someone standing up for what they believe in, just
I think the important part there is that we, all of us who work in the arts or play any part in the arts have found that we can express ourselves. Like, we can bring our thoughts, our feelings, our point of view to the public sphere, and people will listen. Like, and I mentioned this last week, but I think one of the things that ties, or week before last, I'm sorry. I think that one of the things that ties together all of the, especially the mass shooting gun violence, is that people have lost faith and or trust in the systems that exist. So they feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they don't have a way of conflict resolution that will represent them equitably. whether that be a white nationalist who's afraid that they're being, you know, bred out of existence, or that be you know, an urban youth who literally has no voice within the system and is more likely to be you know, abused by the system than represented by it. And to your point that, you know, like, it's valuable for anybody to get up there and speak, it's because, and I've done enough shows for student groups and teenagers and with students that I know this. As soon as they see somebody up there, they go, oh, that's another way to do the thing that, like, it's not even a conscious choice at that point. It's just like, oh, wow, I could totally, like, you know, I mean, I'm not the best speaker in the world, but I could totally get up there and, like, I see the mistakes that they're making, and it's not that big a deal, you know, and, like, everybody and their brother who's our age has a podcast or whatever, but it's, you know, you're encountering this kind of group of youth who doesn't feel like that they have a means of affecting the system, and I think that showing them that art is an accessible way to affect the system is an amazing part of SoLow Fest. I think that's a really valuable part of SoLow Fest, and yeah, sure, you may not reach, like, the entirety of the audience that you know, needs the accessibility, but you might reach 2 new people. Like, one show might reach 2 new people, and that's more than I could ask for. Like, that's more than I could hope for. So you know, I hope. Yeah, I don't know. I find it super valuable. I hope other people out there understand this. Like, it's a hard concept to describe unless you've been there, right? Like, it's hard. Like, unless you've been the one on stage or the one doing the talkbacks, like, you don't. Nobody, like, witnesses that. I'll give an example. I was doing One More River to Cross, and we were doing talkbacks, and we had a school that's specifically for problem students come in. High school sophomores and juniors came in, and it was like 50 students, and every one of them was engaged the entire show. Every one of them had a question for the talkback. The talkback ran like 2 hours because every one of them had a question, and I wanted to, you know, like, engage them, and the actors were all willing to engage them as well. But that, you know, like, unless you've been there, like, I don't know if, I'm sure every one of you has a story like that, you know, where you've been at a show and, like, somebody you didn't expect showed up or you know, was engaged by it. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the live events, the transition back to in-person live events, and accessibility around that. I find it fascinating that a large part of what we've done during the pandemic is really increase accessibility to live artistic endeavors at, like, a blinding pace. Like, the technology to do this, what I'm doing right now, like this live streaming, didn't exist 4 years ago and barely existed 2 years ago. And now we have, like, I have closed captioning, live closed captioning through AI on all of it, on all of the outlets. You know, you can read what we're saying live, and it's not like I'm paying somebody to sit there and type out what we're saying. I'm using a free closed captioning software to make it more accessible. That is amazing, and at the same time, I worry a little bit about this return to live in-person events because it's just as expensive to do a digital show as to do an in-person show. And when you do a hybrid show, you're basically costing twice the amount. You know, there's some costs that replicate, but you're costing twice the amount to do that live, do that live and digital version of the show. What, if anything, has you guys' experience been with returning to in-person events? How are you approaching this? Trying to keep it accessible. I mean, I know, Free Fringe. I'm sorry, Solo Fest is designed to make it accessible. How have you approached that accessibility in your work? Anybody?
Any of
Well,
you guys want to yeah, go.
I would say, I mean, it's a weird world we're getting into now, just because. Well, first of all, I think it's like crazy that now we can live stream, everything. We definitely could have done that 4 or 5 years ago, like live streaming graduations. I'm like, Jesus, where has this been? I mean, I don't know why it's just being a thing now. That's a side topic, but in terms of accessibility, it's, there's definitely more of a heightened awareness on everybody's safety and health, which I think is a great thing. Um, Especially with now the technology is everywhere, and auditions are online, and art's taking a whole new form, especially with this whole NFT thing. But in terms of accessibility, for my case, I've just been trying to be more aware of everybody's place with where their mind is, their comfortability of being around other people's space. Masks are now so almost, it's a very normal thing now to come in to places with masks on, whether they're required or not. Um, I believe that's been my kind of way of trying to make it still accessible while still trying to be in person, because this online thing, doing Zoom school and trying to do shows over Zoom, was terrible, in my opinion. But obviously, it was accessible to everybody, and everybody could still watch it. And it was accessible for us to be with each other to do a show. So it has its advantages, and it certainly has its disadvantages. But
There
I
is
don't
an
know.
element that you lose in the digital only show where there's kind of this interplay between an audience and a performer, or performers that you don't get in a digital show. I've
Especially
experimented.
if
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
especially if it's live.
Yeah.
I mean, we watch TV and movies all the time, right? But that's a totally different case. But if we're talking about theater and trying to do a regular theater show like Hamlet over Zoom, I'm gonna go to sleep and exit. That's it's just really difficult to try to adopt that. But it taught a lot of lessons, and I think in the future this will guide us to have more accessible shows over this platform in a better way. We're going to look back at this and be like, wow, I can't believe we did that. And find, I think, a new avenue that might work. I have hope.
I think what I learned is like the most like important aspect of creating virtual theater is intentionality. Like the difference between a show that is intended to be in a virtual space, intended to be over Zoom, versus something that was planned to be in person and by default had to become virtual. Because I do think I mean, I've seen shows virtually that completely worked because they were intended to be in the virtual space. It was a clear concept of the design, of the director's vision. And I think where it sort of kind of falters is when people try to replicate a staged version of a show on a virtual space. So I think that there is value to both. I would say, like, aside from intentionality, there were a lot of things that I found to be more accessible and more just like valuable in the Zoom space. I think the closed captioning, especially for me, was really important because oftentimes I'll just like become, I don't know, just auditory stuff can sometimes miss its go on some weird paths in my brain. And so I think with my shows, at least, I've been trying to kind of replicate the closed captioning and hand out sort of copies of the script transcript. So not including stage directions, but including all the lines that are said, handing those out to people who want them at the top of shows. I found that that's been really helpful. I also think it is important to note that COVID is still very much a thing, and we've made that clear to people who are participating in SoLow Fest. And on their application form, everybody had to indicate whether masks were going to be optional, whether masks were going to be required, vaccines required, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is information that is readily available on our website. And so I think by making that an aspect of the application, we are encouraging and reminding all of our participants that COVID is still real, and it is something that they need to think about and take into consideration when putting up these live pieces of theater.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a kids show for the first time in 2 years. I do the Independence Charter School show. I do their lighting design, and this year was the first year back after being off for 2 years because of COVID. And you know, they did require masks and required vaccination status, and at the same time, you know, I hear, you know, like I had a technician come to the show and tell me that, you know, he was about to move into a new house, and his new roommate tested positive for COVID before he moved in, and so now his move-in date is pushed back 2 weeks. You know, another show had the last 4 rehearsals canceled before opening because one of the cast members tested positive for COVID. So yeah, COVID is still a thing. In fact, you know, the federal government, as far as federal employees are concerned, just classified, like 2 weeks ago, classified Philadelphia as a high community transmission area for COVID. So definitely be careful. Definitely wear your masks when you're talking to other people up close. Definitely try and change the air out if you're in an enclosed environment constantly. That kind of thing. And I personally would still be checking for COVID's vaccination status and asking people to wear masks, but that's just me. And it's weird because, you know, we had a federal government response to this, and then suddenly we don't. At any rate, I'm not even going to delve into all that. That's crazy making for me. What I did want to talk about with regard to in-person events is work balance and work-life balance was the kind of the term du jour just before COVID. We were all really reaching a burnout phase with I don't know if everyone remembers like March 2020, but we were like, all of us, like everyone was like, you know, this is a lot of work we're doing. You know, like I said, first time in 2 years I did this kid show, and it's a lot of work. Like, we're doing a lot of work, and live in-person events almost require there are things that we could do to make this a little bit easier on all of us, but a lot of hours in the last few days before the show opens, and there's that concept in the arts of the show must go on, you know, and there's some folks fighting that, fighting for a more equitable approach to the arts, and especially live in-person arts, because it is an equity issue as well. You know, not everybody has the free time or the ability to spend their time doing art when the shit hits the fan, for lack of a better term, which it always does during a tech. Not everybody has the ability to, I have a 1-year-old. I have the fortune and ability to hire a babysitter, or my partner is invaluable and will always pick up the baby from daycare or watch her for extra hours if I'm stuck at the theater. Um, but not everybody has that. Not every, there are single parents out there. There are people who literally just cannot spend the time at a theater for 12 hours because they will go unconscious. How have you all been approaching kind of the equitability and the work-life balance, as you've been returning to in-person events, as you've been returning to kind of like working in person, working in an office, working in a theater?
Well, for me, I think what I've done better, not saying I'm perfect at it, but I've just been able to check in with myself about capacity a lot more. I think being um, told from very young age that in order to um, achieve or be successful in the arts, in theater, it means that you have to work harder than everyone else. You have to hustle. You have to do all of these things, and you have to do it by yourself, or else it doesn't count. And or some version of that message, right? And I really appreciate how much the conversation has shifted to like, no, you have to take care of yourself, or else your practice suffers, or else your ability to do this thing you're trying to do suffers. And so I remember last year when I was sort of getting back into the groove of like, oh, I'm writing music again. I want to share it. And I think this is like something that I want to pursue and move forward with. There was definitely a like Icarus flying toward the sun, like at hyper speed. And I knew, and I crashed. Because of course, because everyone does. Everyone finds themselves in that place. And so reapproaching it and saying like, I'm only going to do what I can, it just changes the game. That said, it's different for everyone. People have um, this as their livelihoods. And so saying like, I can't do this because of that. There is a fear that like it means maybe you won't get the next job. You'll be labeled as hard to manage or deal with, or what have you. Speaking up for yourself, speaking up for your health.
I find the time I get the most in trouble is when I start speaking up for like my crew, like working as a TD, and I
Sure.
start telling. Producers hate it when you tell them like, no, we're actually going to pay these people and we're actually going to give them breaks. And yeah, no, sorry, if the show doesn't get up on time, it's what happened. We can talk about paying overtime, but you guys don't like paying the arenas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely speak to a lot of this because I've had quite a journey over the past couple of years, because in 2019, I decided that I wanted to take a break from musical theater, and I did have my equity card, and I was fortunately working consistently. So I had the health insurance and everything. And I decided that I wanted to take a break and try to do more TV and film and break into that different career path. And then music kind of all happened at the same time. But then the pandemic also happened in 2020. And so I was in a weird, unique experience where I didn't quite qualify for unemployment because I hadn't been working, like earning enough as an independent contractor, because like as an equity earner, that was kind of more in like the employee section, but I hadn't been doing that for a long enough time. So I had to work as a delivery driver, and tip your delivery people, everybody, because that was brutal. But then finally I started doing music again, and it's really hard to and that's become my full-time job. And it's really hard to say no to gigs because you don't know, there's kind of like a hustle mindset that you have to have when you work for yourself, because you don't necessarily know, like, what if gigs are just going to stop coming in at some point? And, you know, it's like I have to pay for my own health insurance now, like through, thankfully, the marketplace, but still that's very expensive, for like not great coverage either. So it's been tough to say, like, okay, I am going to take this night off no matter what, even if a gig does come up. And it's a hard line to have to draw for yourself. And that's, and then something else totally different that I wanted to speak about is you were talking about standing up for your crew on different projects that you work on. And I also have been working on getting some indie film projects up and running. And one of the things, my boyfriend also is a director and writer as well. And so we've kind of been teaming up on some smaller projects here and there. And one thing that we're just adamant about is, even if we're indie, even if we're doing this for fun, we're going to push for 10-hour days on set as opposed to the typical 12. Or a lot of times with indie people, they're like, we love it, so we're just going to go, like, until it's done. I don't care if it's a 16-hour day. And if you don't like that, then this isn't the project for you. It's like, no, people need to rest. And just because we love it doesn't mean that we have to work in conditions that frankly just aren't cool. You know, it's not cool to ask that of people. So reasonable work hours and conditions for people on set, definitely.
All right. Hallie has a hard out here, and so I just wanted to give her a moment to head out and say bye. Don't want to like rush you off or anything. Any last thoughts from you before I let you go and take you off screen?
Just come see SoLow Fest. You can learn more about us and see the full festival lineup, including all these wonderful people at solowfest.org. SoLow spelled S-O-W, not W, S-O-L-O-W. I can spell. So solowfest.org. The festival starts tomorrow, and then we run through the 27th, which is next week. So full week and a half of shows. So come check us out. And thank you so much, James, for the opportunity to speak about SoLow Fest and about art.
No worries. And the show's not done yet, so I'm going to transition to a shot of just me so that I can take you off screen. But in walking and chewing gum at the same time, which is something that I tend to do often, we tend like I'm doing layouts and talking at the same time. I don't know that I do either one very well, but yeah, the walking and chewing gum at the same time, I wanted to talk about the PPD commissioner's quote recently, which was in response to the South Street shooting. She said, by the time we, meaning the Philadelphia police, get involved, it's often too late. Yeah, I think that's what we've been saying for the last 2 years is that yeah, the police are not equipped nor able to actually affect a change in the rate of violence in the city, no matter how much the folks who believe in hard knocks policing and sending people to jail all the time would wish it so. I'm gonna come at this from the artist perspective, from the Black perspective, just because that's what I tend to do. I'm an artist. I'm a Black person. To me, the PPD budget, the Philadelphia Police Department budget, and the police department budgets in a lot of cities, combined with the way the justice system is set up, really is just a transportation system for money and power to come out of Black communities and go into the hands of people who are, for lack of a better term, the investor class. People who, own private for-profit prisons, people who um, do other things that are associated with the justice system to make money off of it. Um, and you are also taking voting power away from Black communities in a more direct sense because, in case you don't know, all the people who are in jail, their votes count, their presence as population counts in the county they're jailed in, not in the county that they live in. So yeah, so you're literally directly taking voting power out of Black communities and putting it in the communities where the prisons are, which are invariably not majority minority communities. And so, what from the artist perspective, what would you do with? I think it was something like 50% of the budget of the city of Philadelphia. My associate producer Meg actually posted budget information on the links in the chat, but that's about the schedule. But there's been a couple of pie charts the last couple of years of the split up of the layout of the budget, and I believe the direct Philadelphia Police Department was something like 26 million in fiscal year 20. What do you think that even if we just took what is that 1% of that and put it towards the arts, and then like let's say we cut the Philadelphia police budget by like a grand total of like 6%. That's like $6 million, and invested like 2 million in arts, 2 million in housing, and 2 million in healthcare. That would be like more than those department budgets in their entirety, each. What would you say that the Philadelphia community, the Philadelphia artist community, could do to really bring about change in the city of Philadelphia? Any of you guys have any ideas? I'd be interested.
The thing that sort of I jumped to immediately, and it goes back to the conversation we were having about like taking care of yourself, is just give that money directly to artists. And I know that sounds hippy dippy, but my point is, if folks who pursue the arts, are artists, have the means to take care of themselves first, I believe it would improve the arts and culture sector, because you wouldn't have artists falling over themselves to get cast in this play because it's one of the only things available for them this season, and if they don't get it, they have to look for some other job. I think what I'm fearful of is that money going to like large nonprofit theater companies, just with the makeup of who still invariably lead those organizations.
I mean,
they don't,
to be fair, going from 1.5 million to 6 million, there's only so much that the large nonprofits can absorb, I would think, in their budgets.
I guess, but
we should see what some of them do with their budgets. So
Yeah.
put it right in their pockets. But
I guess my larger point is, there is the like, there seems to be like a I don't know what's another word of like not pecking order necessarily, but like what I would not want to have happen is yeah, the same folks who get most of the grant money already, most of the funding already, um, and to yeah to distribute that more equitably, such in the way that like when the pandemic happened and you did have a lot of artists who all of a sudden weren't able to work, that money was there to help folks. You know, micro granting programs sprung up because the money wasn't going to the art. It should have gone to the artists. And so it would be a dream come true if that sort of program was in existence at all times so that artists could support themselves.
So I pulled up the pie chart, and this is the problem with large numbers: is like none of us can remember places in the large numbers. The fiscal year 2020, but 2021 budget adopted in 2020. The police department itself, without all the ancillaries of prisons and criminal justice, 727 million. I mean, I don't know where to go from there. Like, this is the same year that they cut the arts budget, which did include direct grants to artists through the Cultural Fund,
Yeah.
to 1.5 million from 4 million the previous year. Yeah,
I just
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say an idea going back to something to do with arts funding. And then I have to go because I have to get to work. But I wish I could remember the name right now, but there was a program, I believe it was in Oakland in California. And I was listening to a podcast, and this woman had started this music program for children in underprivileged communities that just didn't have resources there. And it was a music program. And what they ended up doing some research that found that when children study music, and I think it's maybe if it's like at least 5 hours of dedicated practice on a musical instrument, their ability to process information is greatly increased. Their ability to focus is greatly increased. And so at this one place where they had this program, I mean, the percentage of students who graduated high school and went on to graduate from college just went up astronomically. And I mean, just also think about the balance and effect, because a lot of times in these communities, like I've toured in the schools in Philadelphia doing educational theater, and you just see how unfair it all is. And you can definitely see the impact of trauma in these communities. We all know that this is happening. And so if you were to use those resources to go specifically into the communities that are in need of just more love and more resources, then it would be incredible what that could cause a chain reaction for. I mean, it's really cool. I wish that somebody could find the name of this program and look up more about it. But so many of their musicians went on and did really cool things, like touring as a guitarist for Beyonce and all these. And it's just kind of insane the change that they were able to create there. So honestly, if we put more into the youth, then I feel like that's a really, really big opportunity there.
And to James's point, I think putting the money in the hands directly of artists opens us up to being able to put that now available time and resources into youth, which a lot of us do, whether or not we have it. You know, like I said, I just spent many hours on a kids show that I'm not going to be fairly compensated for. Not because the school doesn't want to, but because there literally aren't the resources.
Yeah, they don't have it. Yeah.
All right, so it is 11 o'clock, 11:02 according to my digital clock, but according to the bell on the church, it just turned 11, so I'm not sure who's right.
God, always God.
um, let's cut the conversation here. I really appreciate you guys' time. We didn't get to the DHS Terror alert, but I'll inform everybody about that right after you guys drop off. Any last thoughts? Anything that you guys want to get out there before I let you go?
I think just, go to solofest.org, check out the lineup, be adventurous, come out and see live performance, stay safe, like James said. Myself and Kat will be at Quig's. The show starts at 7 on Monday. That's June 20th, and we're going to be really excited to see folks and to play some tunes for y'all.
All right. And Daniel?
June 27th, testing site will also be at Quig's, so please be there. It starts at 8 p.m. To be frank, we'll be playing music. There'll be live music, and the after party will be there, so I hope to see you guys, and I will also try to make it to your show, so very awesome stuff. Please come to the SoLow Fest. It's going to be a great festival this year.
And Kat, any last words?
Basically just what they said. Yeah, and as far as the other stuff that we talked about, just stay educated and vote, everybody.
Oh, and follow Kat Rivers' music on Instagram. So you can see all the places that she plays, because I haven't been able to check her out live, but I will get to see her on Monday, and she's definitely gotten a new fan.
Awesome.
Aww. I'm a fan too. So.
And I'm James Haro in storage on Instagram. I don't know, Daniel, if you have a handle.
Daniel Burgess _Jr.
Nice.
_Jr.?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, folks. And I'm going to transition to just me on screen. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate everybody who watches live. And if you don't get the chance to watch it live, feel free to watch it in instant replay. It goes live for replay right after the show ends, and it's available anytime. The DHS issued a terror alert. This is, I laugh, but I probably shouldn't. The Department of Homeland Security issued a terrorism threat to the United States, warning of increased danger of right-wing extremist activity. The period is through the midterm elections, and this official advisory has received inexplicably minimal coverage by the mainstream media. So DHS finally learning what we've all known for several, decades, that white extremism is very dangerous, especially if you claim to it as white nationalism. You're probably a danger to yourself and or others. So be on the lookout, folks. Be safe. Stay informed. There's a bunch of resources to stay safe on the bulletin, but they basically all boil down to stay alert and stay safe. Pay attention to what's going on around you. That's all I got for you this week. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too. I believe we'll be back next week. We're going to be talking with Timothy Reimer a little bit about a golf course that the city of Philadelphia has as a line item in their budget. You didn't know? Yeah, we're funding the building of a golf course, folks, to the tune of something like $4 million, which is more than we're considering giving art. A private golf course. A golf course that we won't all be allowed to use. A golf course that took down several acres of prime old-growth forest already without getting permission from anyone first. We'll talk about it. But tune in next week for that discussion and that special guest. Really appreciate you coming out and listening to us talk. If you have anything to add to the conversation, reach out to me, reach out to Meg. We'll be happy to get you on as a guest of the show. So, for the rest of it, just enjoy the rest of your week, folks. It's a good week. We'll see you out there, and see you next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m.